I sort of finally surrendered and said, okay, I'll take some medication. And again, taking medication for me was an admission of defeat. If I had a problem with diabetes, I wouldn't think twice about taking medicine for diabetes. It wouldn't, you've got diabetes, Jonathan, you need to take medicine. I'd go, yeah, okay. But again, because of my brain, because it was my brain, somehow I should be able to sort this out, but I didn't expect myself to sort any other parts of my body out.
Often than not, we ignore our mental health issues until it's too late. Statistics show that millions of people delay seeking help for years, with many receiving a diagnosis more than a year after symptoms first appear. The cost isn't just personal. The global toll of untreated mental illness reaches into the billions each year through healthcare expenses and lost productivity. In this episode, Jonathan Kemp shares his lifelong journey through bipolar disorder, depression, and dyslexia, and how decades of struggle led him to redefine what peace and success actually meant to him. We talk about the stigma around therapy and medication, why awareness alone isn't enough, and how small daily habits and connection can completely transform your mental well-being. Welcome to Move Your Mind, where we uncover why you are holding yourself back from getting the life you want and what to do about it, with the help from high-achieving guests and experts in behavioural science, personal development, and the health and wellness space. Join us if you're ready to move out of your own way toward your ideal self. I'm your host, Nick Brax, and I've been working in the health and wellness space for the last 15 years, helping people find direction and gain the courage to take control of their life. My mission is simple: to help you learn everything that I wish I knew, so you can become your ideal self. Lacking guidance, I spent the majority of my youth feeling lost and disempowered, which led to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and substance abuse. Looking back, I didn't have the vocabulary to communicate what I was experiencing. And as a man, I didn't resonate with the emotional language used in traditional therapy. I didn't need to talk about my feelings. I needed tangible solutions to guide me toward building a life I was proud of. If you can relate, then this podcast is for you. In this episode, we discuss why we often ignore mental health issues until it's too late. If you're ready to take action and build a stronger mindset, then keep listening. Jonathan, thank you so much for making the time to come and have this chat.
It's a pleasure. Really nice to be here, Nick, and thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you, mate. And we had a bit of a pre-chat last week, and probably should have been recording that if we could have, because so much to talk about, and I got a bit of an insight into your story, and I think it's something that I know our listeners will get a huge amount out of. It's very relevant, your story, especially in this day and age, especially for men. So I'm going to jump in before we get into anything else by just asking, so our listeners can learn a bit more about you, can you just give a bit of a background on yourself and how you came to be where you are today?
Yes, sure. So I first realized that there was something wrong when I was probably age 6 or 7. I didn't feel comfortable within myself. I didn't feel I fitted in. And this sort of carried on. And I was about to say got worse, but yes, it got worse as I progressed. And by the time I left school, I remember sitting on my bed at home, aged 18, thinking, and it was like almost a sort of horrible dawn awakening, thinking I'm psychotic. I stopped drinking and taking drugs. I didn't really take many drugs anyway, but I stopped taking all substances when I was about 21 and haven't had anything since. And the reason I did that is because already by that time, I knew that the line between sort of sanity and insanity was finer than a piece of hair. And if I drank or did anything else, I crossed over that line whether I wanted to or not. So that was the reason for that. I attended various 12-step fellowships, which are set up to help people with addictive tendencies, and they helped. And I was hoping that, if I did all the sort of guidance thoroughly, that would sort out my issues. And it did help. But now looking back, I don't regret having done it, but actually it wasn't addressing what I now understand is to be my core problem. Moving on, I was working as a police officer, so throughout my whole working career, I've always worked. I don't know if I've actually ever taken a day off because of mental health. Possibly it's less noticeable since I've been an entrepreneur because I'm a master of my own time. In my sort of mid-30s, I left the Met Police and specifically to go to university. I'd never been to university. In fact, in my heart of hearts, I thought I was stupid. And applying to go to university, I did a postgraduate diploma and then a master's degree. So I skipped the undergraduate. And for a master's degree, I chose a nice, easy subject, shipping, international trade and finance. Oh, it was a nightmare. But I stuck with it. 13 worked, I took one day off every 2 weeks. I worked sort of 10 to 12 hours a day, and I did it for 1 year. I nearly got distinction, and they said it was one of the most remarkable things they'd ever seen. For me, though, I was just completely burnt out. I didn't even know if I could flip burgers. I then worked in shipping for a bit before setting up my own business. And throughout the sort of all this time, internally in my own mind and my head, I had this, continual sort of interference. It wasn't there the whole time, but it was there a lot of the time. And some days I remember, my sort of in my 30s, some days just functioning was a real effort. And I'd walk down to the park. We lived quite near the River Thames, and I'd walk along by the river, and just like putting one foot in front of the other was a real effort. And I had no idea why. And I think what's relevant, you talked about the male viewers, and I suspect for women as well, one of the things that was really clear in my mind was that to see a doctor or a therapist or a psychiatrist was a sign of weakness. And it was an admission of defeat, which actually, now looking back with hindsight, I only applied that rule to one part of my body, my brain. So if I damaged my foot, my ankle, my elbow, if there's something wrong with my blood, I lost my eyesight in one eye overnight because of the stress I was putting myself under. I went to see the doctor, but the one part of my body I wouldn't go and see a doctor about, and I thought it would be a weakness, was my brain, which makes now I look back, logical sense. And certainly when I was growing up, if people talked about therapists, you sort of raised your eyebrows and thought, God, it's probably West Coast America surfers, hippies, it's some weird American thing. Whereas now, for me, therapists are experts in their craft, and they all specialize in different areas. And depending on what I want to, achieve or solve, I will find the appropriate therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd reached another sort of low point in my late 30s. When I say low point, I was really at a sort of fork in the road. Either I call it a day, or I go and do, which is what I'd always promised not to do, which was go and get medical help. Because I tried everything. I tried making money. I tried getting a good education. I thought it's something external to me. I tried to do well in my career. I tried living an almost monastic type lifestyle. You name it, I tried it, and nothing external worked. And I was at my wit's end. So I went to see a therapist, and they said, you're suffering badly from depression. And I said, no, I'm not, because I didn't know any different. And I then saw another therapist who said exactly the same thing. And I said, no, I'm not. And I've been seeing them for about a year, and they finally persuaded me to go and see a psychiatrist. So if it was bad seeing a therapist, seeing a psychiatrist was even worse, because that's what people, I used the word nutters, that's what nutters went and did. People were just like completely cuckoo. But again, that thinking was born out of ignorance. And certainly now, psychiatrists are highly qualified. They're doctors. They then go on further qualifications in psychiatry. And their speciality is how the brain works and what to do to make sure the brain works as it should. And so, a bit like a sports professional, if you're an Olympic athlete and you've done something to your leg, you'll go to a specialist who knows about tendons or whatever it is. And for me, seeing a psychiatrist is the equivalent. And so I went to see the psychiatrist. He said I was depressed as well. And I said I wasn't. And he said, okay, track your moods for a year. Well, no, he said track your moods. And so for 1 year, there's one thing one of the skills I have is I'm highly analytical and I'm highly detailed orientated. So I meticulously tracked my mood for a year. And by the end of it, I could see beyond any shadow of doubt, if the medium is I'm okay, I would either spike up occasionally, but a lot of the time I was right down at the bottom, and then I would sort of like go along the bottom and then I'd sort of come up a bit. And it was undeniable. And I sort of finally surrendered and said, okay, I'll take some medication. And again, taking medication for me was an admission of defeat. Looking back, if I had a problem with diabetes, I wouldn't think twice about taking medicine for diabetes. It wouldn't, you've got diabetes, Jonathan, you need to take medicine. I'd go, yeah, okay. But again, because it was my brain, somehow this, somehow I should be able to sort this out, but I didn't expect myself to sort any other parts of my body out.
Yeah.
And so I took medication for depression. And after about 3-4 months, suddenly my brain started to clear. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've been depressed ever since I can remember. Since I was 6, 7, I've been depressed. And the only reason I said that I hadn't been depressed is because I knew no different. But once my brain had cleared, I then could see beyond any shadow of doubt that depression had been, a huge factor in my life. Fast forward, I then, had more challenges, and I actually took out a loan, went to America to a psychiatric center. I was diagnosed with bipolar there. I'd never heard of bipolar. I had no idea what it was. And this time they recommended I should take medication, and I said, okay. And it's been a sort of gradual process from there. Therapy's really helped. So I've had one-to-one therapy. That's been very helpful. Sort of explaining why I behaved the way I did, and also helping to explain to me, faulty thinking, and just helping me to sort of unravel some of my behaviors and some of my attitudes. I did group therapy, which was a real eye-opener. And the thing that always sticks in my mind about group therapy is that someone will, and it could be me, sitting there describing something which I think is quite normal, and everyone else is literally crawling up their chair in either sort of anger or shock or amazement. And it was explained to me that because these things have become normalized, it's just like, this is what it is. But actually, our acceptance of the situation has clouded our judgment. And for everyone else in the room, they are feeling the feelings that we should be feeling. And that was a real eye-opener. I then set up my own business. I became an entrepreneur, developed a new note-taking technique, which actually I developed at university. I started with an existing technique and started modifying it. And the reason I did it, I didn't know that I had a problem, but what I did know that my studying was no good. And so I had to do something radically different to what I did at school. And so I used this technique. And for the first time ever, I started to understand, what was being said in lectures. I started to be able to write sort of good quality reports.
If you're feeling stuck, you're not alone. Most people don't realize how connected your mental health is to your body, from your gut to your sleep, movement, food, mindset. Getting active each day can shift how you feel, build confidence, and transform your quality of life. At Move Your Mind, we guide you through this process step by step. If this resonates and you want to learn more, simply go to my Instagram at Nick Brax and click the link on the bio to fill out an application, and I'll send you over more information about the program. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. If you find the show helpful, please share it with a friend and follow me on Instagram. It really helps.
And after I finished shipping, I set up my own business and started training people, mainly in the City of London. So it's like lawyers, people working in banks, consultancies, anyone who had to go to a lot of meetings and really think clearly as to what was going on. This technique made an enormous difference. And I had it scientifically tested. It showed that it increased real-time understanding by 20%, which is like enormous. I then did another test to see if it helped people with dyslexia. And the reason I did that is that a few of they were originally clients and then they became colleagues, said that I might be dyslexic because sometimes I mix up my words. Sometimes my sentences are disjointed, and that's either when I'm speaking or when I'm writing. And I thought, right, I'm going to go and get tested. So I was in my late 40s and I went along and I was sitting there during these tests thinking, if I apply all the techniques that I've learned, it might prove I'm not dyslexic. And then I was sitting there thinking, well, maybe I should just, and then I thought, John, just shut up. I mean, this is an internal conversation, and just do the tests. So I did them. And after about 3 minutes, I hit this maths problem. And within about a millisecond, I was 12 again. I was sitting in those maths exams. I couldn't do them. I couldn't figure them out. And I started crying. I'm a 49-year-old man crying over a test. Anyway, I finished them and the lady said, yes, beyond any shadow of doubt, you have dyslexia. And that, again, with sort of, as the years went on after that diagnosis, looking back, it helped to make sense of many things. So, for example, why did I need to work 10 to 12 hours a day when everyone else was working like 3 or 4 or 5 or, much less? And I now know and realize that and accept that, if me and a person who doesn't have dyslexia have to learn something, it will naturally take me time and a half to double time to learn the same thing. It's just the way it is. And actually, the advent of AI for me has just been a godsend, because what it means is that I no longer have the fear of writing something that people might not understand. And so what I will do is I will plan out using smart wisdom, the note-taking technique. I'll then type it up as if I was speaking to someone, and I'll give it to Chat GPT and say, please, can you copy edit this? And historically, I would have had to send it to someone, wait a couple of days, get it back, do some more alterations, send it. And that could take a week or so. Whereas now, within about probably 5 minutes, I've got something that's, good to go. COVID, I thought, would be a doddle. I know what shit feels like. I've felt that way for many, many years. And I thought to myself, COVID, this will be really, really easy. How wrong I was. It was a nightmare. But what I hadn't understood was the importance for me of community and being among people. So now when I work, I don't work in my apartment. I go out to a coffee shop. I go to one in the morning and then I go to a different one in the afternoon. I know all the staff there. I say hi. I ask how they're getting on. And I won't really say much more than that. But it's just being around people makes a phenomenal difference. And so during COVID, I was on my own. I shared my apartment with someone. But for the most part, I'd be on my own. And I just became acutely aware, because there were no distractions, of just how everything was a real struggle. And over the first 2 years, I had 3 or 4 bipolar highs and crashes. and they were quite severe. And I'd gone back to sort of trying to fix it myself. So I was keeping a daily record 5 times a day, actually, of where my mood was. Was there anything that would help shift it? Was it meditation, or was it affirmations, or whatever? And after the last crash, I'd reached that point of no return. And to be honest, I've put up with this thing for 50 years, and I thought I've just had enough. And so again, it was decision time. And I remembered I'd just started writing the book, Finding Peace of Mind, on my experience with mental health and neurodiversity. And I'd written the section on what to do when I had like a crash. And I couldn't. And what happens for me when I have a bipolar crash, it happens within 24 hours. And when I'm at the bottom, that will last about 4 to 6 weeks. And it is literally like my brain's been removed. Anything that might have worked before just has no effect whatsoever. And I couldn't remember for the life of me what I'd written. So I looked up on my laptop, got it out. Step one was to be open-minded and willing. And I remember when I wrote that, I winced. I thought, because it's almost like a weakness. And I thought, okay, step two was go and get professional medical help. And even sort of up until that point, very rarely would I tell a doctor what was happening in real time. I'd wait like 3-4 months afterwards, and I'd be seeing them about, I don't know, flu or something. And I say, oh yeah, no, 3 months ago, God, it was a nightmare, really tough. And so this time it was about seeing someone in real time. And then number 3 was to take their advice and take medication if that's what they advised. And so I saw the doctor. They asked me to see a psychiatrist, and I saw one within about 3 or 4 days. The psychiatrist said, you need to change your medication. And it was quite a tough readjustment, which is the reason I'm pausing. I'm just trying to think how to explain it. So what medicine might work for one person and work really, really well, and they have the same illnesses I have, if I take the same medicine, it might have a completely different impact. And that's one of the sort of frustrations with mental health medication. And so I had quite a rough period for about probably 4 months. But I stuck with it. And about August time, it was August 2022, it was just my brain just cleared. It was like an absolute miracle. It wasn't an effort to live. It wasn't an effort to breathe. It wasn't an effort to think, to walk. I mean, literally, it just felt like a complete miracle. And at that point, I'd been thinking about writing a book, but I wasn't prepared to do it unless I had a sort of period of stability. And so for the next 4 or 5 months, everything was nice and stable. And then in sort of the following January, I started to write the book, which is now all done and dusted, as it were. So I think another big change for me, and I think it's relevant to all people with careers, is that, and it's partly due to my background. So I come from a very privileged English background. And, I was always driven by this idea of accumulation of wealth. And the other thing that drove me was success. And it was, even if logically I could see that it didn't make any sense, it drove me all the time. And a big breakthrough for me was, I can't remember if it was before or after the medication started to work. I think it was around the same time. I suddenly sort of thought, because a few people had pointed this out to me about this obsession about wealth. And I was thinking about it and I thought, well, actually, I can determine my own definition of wealth. And then I thought, what is it? What have I got, age 60, that has a value? And I thought, well, the real thing that I've got that has enormous value is my knowledge and experience around mental health and neurodiversity. I've got 50 plus years of experience. And what makes it even more valuable is that I've got experience of refusing to go down the right paths for getting help and trying to do it myself. And then I've got, 20 years experience of following medical advice, sometimes more than others. And actually that made sense for me. And then I thought, okay, yes, that makes sense. And then I thought to myself, well, about success, I can determine that as well. It doesn't have to be, position A, B, and C or whatever. And I decided that success for me was to put my knowledge and experience about mental health and neurodiversity out in the public domain for the benefit of others. That was it. And since then, that sort of obsession around the wealth, around success has dissipated. And I don't even think about it now. And a friend asked me today, he said, is there anything you would like to be doing differently right now? And I've known him we were police officers together back in the day. And I said to him, no, I am where I am, and it's just I'm doing what I'd like to be doing. It's spot on where it is right now.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing all of that, mate. And what a story. And it's so important that people, hear these kind of conversations because it's such a complicated area and there's a lot of taboo with getting help, like we were saying, especially with men when it comes to medication. I know for me, I, different story to yours, but I had, mental health issues, and I'm relating to a lot of things you're saying where I was, I'd tried so many different things. I had seen so many different experts, and I was doing a lot of things to try and keep things at bay, exercising every day. I'd be working. I had all these big goals. And the bigger part was I never felt comfortable in my own skin. I felt like I had to become this huge success. I had to become a famous actor, build all these businesses, and there was no end to what would be enough. And, there's still parts of that there today, but eventually I found out I had ADHD, got medicated for it, and felt really terrified about just going down that one step. And it wasn't until my the psychiatrist at the time was saying to me that, I used to have a binge drinking problem, and she was saying, well, so for 10 years of your life, you were binge drinking, getting yourself into life-threatening situations, yet you're scared to take this little pill that's designed to actually help improve your brain. And it's crazy how we look at it. You can have fear that maybe it's going to change me, though it's going to remove my creativity or whatever it is. But it, makes such a difference. And it's not to say that, medication is a solution for everyone, but we need to be, I think what it is really is we all need to be talking about this stuff, being open, educated, so we can understand and so we can, know where to go. I think, like you were saying, when we have a problem physically, we know what to do. We need to be taking charge of that with our mindset.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. And it's funny that when you were describing, if you take this little pill, the worry is it might change my behavior, might affect me. And then I was thinking about what drink did to me. I remember I worked in the Australian outback for a year, and it was probably the best year of my life. Absolutely amazing. And I was working as a jackaroo, which in American terms they call cowboys. And I remember one incident where we'd been drinking all day on the cattle station. We then went to the local village, which was about 30 miles away, and carried on. And I was so ill, and that lasted for about 2 days. I mean, really, really ill. And and there's me worried about a little pill that might affect my behavior. And every time I drank, actually, I was getting into more and more trouble.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense, does it? And no, it was similar to me. It was like, just progressively, drinking to try and escape and getting in more and more trouble. And yeah, you're in a cycle until you break it. And yeah, again, it's something I think so many people in different ways are doing. And I think it's normalized in society where it's almost, well, I think similar in the UK. In Australia, it's almost a rite of passage that, you get to 18, you start going out on a Friday, Saturday night. It's not really seen as a weird thing for people to getting blackout drunk. That's just what you do on the weekend. But we don't really have enough conversations about, even with our friends, talk. I wish I had a friend who really was pulling me aside and saying, "Hey, what's going on? Clearly something's not right that you're doing this." And I didn't do that for other people that I've seen in that situation, but we should be, because I don't think anyone that's in a good place really would have the need to do that.
And that makes a lot of sense for me personally, because I know the reasons that I was drinking was because I felt it helped me to be normal. It helped me to socialize, and but it was never enough.
Yeah, always needed more.
Exactly.
The
And
same
I
as
was
oh, sorry, you
so
go.
yeah, and I was getting into dangerous situations, and actually, in a way, I was looking for those dangerous situations as well, because at that point I would feel alive, and it
Exactly.
was crazy.
If you're feeling stuck, we get it. Most people don't realize how connected your mind is to your body. Sleep, gut health, food, exercise, it all matters. At Move Your Mind, we help you lose weight, build confidence, and reset your mindset in just 100 days. There's no extremes and no experience needed. We guide you to build simple habits and routines that will last for a lifetime. If this resonates and you want to learn more, simply go to my Instagram at Nick Brax and click the link on the bio to fill out an application, and I'll send you over more information about the program. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. If you have any suggestions for new topics or guests, please send me a DM on Instagram at Nick Brax. Which is really, like you talked about, the addiction part, and it's you're looking for the next thrill, and that's going to be more and more extreme each time because we're going to adjust, as we go. And if we can't keep getting it, then we're going to panic. So it's looking for what's next, what's next, what's next. So it's a vicious cycle. So for you, with you were saying you had this fixation that you needed to become wealthy to justify yourself. What was it? Can you describe the feeling? What you had? Was it just you didn't feel like you would be enough until you hit this mark? Did you know tangibly what the mark was that you were saying you should hit? Like, how did that whole process feel to you?
I had an experience. I was in my mid-20s. I was in the police, and after I finished my sort of probation, it's like a 2-year probation. Again, whatever I was doing was never enough. So I managed to get a rundown property and started developing it with a view to leaving the police and becoming a property developer. And I was about a third of the way through, and I'd stripped out all the floors, all the ceiling. It was midwinter. It was snowing. The snow was coming through the back of the house because there was no back of the house. And I had a cold water tap under the stairs, and that was it. And the loo had to flush with a what do you call them? A bucket. Sorry, I knew so dyslexic. And then I got introduced to someone who was investing on the stock market, and they were making some serious money. And I just thought, sod this property development. So I literally stopped overnight. I knew nothing about the stock market whatsoever. And within sort of 2 months, I knew more than the people that I'd originally met. I managed to persuade my bank manager to lend me substantial amounts of money backed on my property. So I'd be on a night shift in the police, and I'd be losing or making the equivalent of a year or 2 years or 3 years worth of wages in a night. And I decided that if I could earn 1 million by the time I was 26, I think, maybe 24, 25, if I could earn 1 million, then I was a useless shit, but I could just about live with it. And it looked like I was going to do that. And as soon as that situation looked like it was going to realize, I then thought, no, sod this, 10 million. And at that point, I suddenly realized it didn't matter how much I made, it wasn't going to make a difference. So I'd associated, and that was a horrible, horrible feeling. I remember where I was. I was walking along the street when it happened, and it was just like an earth-shattering revelation. But I had fixed in my mind, if I had this number of properties, if I had an estate in Scotland, if I had a couple of cattle stations in Australia, then, that would I would then feel that I'd done something. But now, where I am now, actually, although, as I say, living in the Australian outback was probably the best year of my life, none of those things would have given me the peace and quiet and the sense of just feeling comfortable. And I remember once somebody was saying to me, this was after I'd set up on my own, and I either somebody said to me or I read it, and it was a Buddhist saying that the purpose of life is finding the purpose of life. And that made a lot of sense. And I
Yeah,
think for each one of us, it's working out, well, what makes us tick and what gives us satisfaction and reward.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's yeah, and I mean that's the crazy part about it. It's like all these external things when really the answer is more simple. It's and none of that. Even if you had it all, you're not going to find as much purpose and meaning than what you're talking about now in just something that's really authentic and about helping people. Like no amount of anything else would replace that you're talking about. You can actually have an impact on people's lives and you're putting something positive out into the world and you can't really put a price tag on that.
I would completely agree. The things now that sort of make a good day for me, I mean, I'm lucky, I live in central London. And, it's just small things, smiling at people, helping people with their luggage if they're struggling up, stairs from the London Underground, helping people with directions. It's just those little things, or maybe having a chat with someone in one of the cafes and they're having a struggle and just sort of sitting and listening. And
Mm.
it's those little things that actually, for me, make a successful day.
Yeah, I love that, and that's a great way for all of us to think because we can get so caught up in uh, just the all of the different sort of things that come up every day and the stress and the never ending cycle of needing to do all of these different things when really the joyful things in life are just embracing the mundane, embracing the in between moments. What was coming to mind for me, you were telling the story about what we've been talking about with needing to justify your reality, needing to achieve these different things. How much of a part do you think that plays in society today, where we've got social media? We're in such a capitalistic world where so many of us are trying to get to the next thing. People are on Instagram looking at how can I get X amount of followers? How can I achieve this? How can I make this much money? Do you feel like that's really a part of our culture now? That it's a pretty big problem.
I think it's added another layer of complexity, it's a completely artificial layer of complexity that a small group of people have and engineered for the sole purpose of making money for themselves. And they've used, if I'm sort of putting my sort of cynical head on, they've employed the best people who understand about neuroscience, understand about how the brain works, addiction, and they've employed these people and created products and services to suck people in. So I think now probably even more so because of this extra layer of complexity, helping people to realize that it's the really simple things. It's appreciating what you see. It's appreciating the ability to walk. It's appreciating the wind on your arms. It's, smiling at someone. It's the really simple things actually can give, I was about to say reward, calmness. And for me, calmness is the reward. Having said all of that, I'm about to do a sponsored walk over 7 months, starting on January the 1st in Scotland. And I'll be walking through Scotland, England, up through Wales, and then across to Ireland, and then down the length of Ireland. And I will use social media I plan to sort of take photographs because photography is a hobby, but I also plan to do random interviews with people, maybe 50 or so interviews, asking people about, how do they achieve mental well-being. And so I will use, the social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, maybe TikTok, YouTube, and I'm sure I will get obsessed by the number of followers. But actually, my objective is the same thing, is just to put my knowledge and experience out there. And whatever happens, happens. But the reward comes in putting in the effort.
If you feel like you've lost control of your health, physically or mentally, Move Your Mind is here to help you. We guide you through weight loss, lifestyle change, and resetting your mindset without any extremes or overwhelm. If this resonates and you want to learn more, simply go to my Instagram at Nick Brax and click the link on the bio to fill out an application, and I'll send you over more information about the program. Thank you for supporting the podcast. If you find this show helpful, please share it with a friend and follow me on Instagram. It really helps. Yeah, exactly. And it's a fine line what you're talking about there. And that's what I struggle with, with my business. I'm having to put stuff out on social media all the time where, we're selling the different services through social media, and then it can get really difficult because you're having to actually look at this stuff and use it as a metric for growing the business, but it's through my, my personal brand. So then you're sort of having to, tread that line of not getting obsessed and trying to need it to grow, but also trying to do it. So it is a real fine line, but I think you can find that balance like you're talking about there. And it's really, I think when it goes off track, it's when you focus on the wrong thing. So if you can really just stay focused on, the same with the podcast for me. I used to be getting really frustrated that, I wanted it to become the biggest wellness podcast in the world. And I was looking at the numbers and all of these different things. And sometimes it was going well, then it would plateau and I'd be getting so anxious. And then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I would actually do this even if no one listened to it, because I genuinely enjoy having these conversations. And I'm just going to focus on that. I'm not even going to look at the numbers. I'm just going to keep doing it. And I find it so fulfilling. It's really just simplified it, and it's growing. And if it grows and becomes something significant, great. But who cares? I feel fortunate that I can have you giving me your time to have this conversation. I can share your story with, my audience and be able to do that. It's, what more can you want out of it? That's really the gift of doing it.
And actually so one of the decisions I made in the last fortnight was that, so my book comes out on the 10th of October. I'm going to be doing this walk for mental health charities from the 1st of January, probably through till end of July. And what I didn't want was people to think that I'm doing it to sort of upsell, whatever that is. So actually, I made two decisions. So in terms of smart wisdom, which is the technique that I've created, anyone who buys the book, there is a code in there where they can access the online course for free. And that's the course that is the equivalent to what I would go and train, a bank in the city. So that takes away all the sort of monetary element around smart wisdom. And my intention with smart wisdom is to give it away as best as I can. And then the second thing I decided to do was that all profits from my book, from the point of publication for the first year, would go to the charities that I'm raising money for. And any speaking events that I do around mental health and mental well-being, all that money would go to these charities. So that completely removes any sort of financial incentive or element. And that actually, it took me a bit of time to get my head around it, but it also released a lot of pressure. So I don't have like a double motive, if that makes sense.
It frees you up to just focus on doing it for the joy of doing it. And that, no, I totally get it. And you look, it's a selfless thing to do. And I often, I wish and I hope my goal is to get to the point where I can grow my company, to a level where it supports me enough so then I can do the podcast, the speaking, any of the mental health resources completely free. That's my goal, because it is so tricky and for me, like, public speaking became my number one paid career for about 5 years. And then I had to step back and sort of think, no, this is like not healthy for me anymore. It's taken the joy out of why I was doing it. So it's so tricky to find that balance, but I think I think it's a really good move, what you're saying there.
Thank you. Yeah, it did. It released a lot of pressure, but it enables me to be as cheeky as I want to be, in terms of like promotion and everything else, because the motive is to put my experience out there for the benefit of others. It's not to make money. So heavens,
Yeah,
let's go for it.
you can have fun with it. I love it. I think that's
Absolutely.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening, if they want to find out about your book or, the walk that you're doing or anything else, your other work, where can we send our listeners?
So I'm having an author website built at the moment, which is jonathankemp.com. And that should be running by the time the book comes out on the 10th of the 10th. And everything about the book and how to buy the book. I mean, it'll be on Amazon, and how to buy the book and anything about the walk, what's happening on the walk, will all be on the website.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll have that in the show notes, so make sure to check that out. And Jonathan, love the chat with you, mate. We finish every episode with 5 closing questions. These can be sort of quick answers, whatever comes to mind for you. And the first one being, what's your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
Okay, the best childhood memory is a dog we had called Samantha. She was a Dalmatian.
Love it.
Just playing with Samantha.
What do you think is currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
I'd say it is social media. It's social media, and so that's one element. A second is the bullying that takes place, again, through social media. And from what I read, women are harder hit by that, and unfairly so. And I think the other thing, again, connected with social media, is now for my news, I go to traditional sources like traditional papers, but a lot of it I get on Instagram. So I'm seeing what's happening in other parts of the world in real time. And I have to make a real effort not to get sucked into it and get upset by it. And it is difficult.
Do more about it. What is your personal definition of happiness?
Just feeling at peace with myself and being able to walk along the street, feel comfortable, feel at peace, just enjoy looking at what's around me, listening to the sounds. And it's funny, I went to Vietnam 2 years ago for 6 weeks. And I was in Hanoi for 2 weeks, which is the capital. And then I was in Ho Chi Minh for 2 weeks. Got that right? Yes. And I realized the things that made me happy in Vietnam were exactly the same as what made me happy in London, which is what I've just described.
It's so interesting, yeah. And I've thought about that a lot because often, I mean, I travel a lot. I've lived in different locations, and even to this day, there's an obsession about um, choosing the perfect place to live. And my girlfriend's Canadian. I won the green card lottery, and I've been living in New York. And there's always, this thing of, is New York the best place? But hang on, that's busy. Maybe we need somewhere more relaxed. And could Europe be better because you've got so many places to travel? Or maybe moving back to Australia. And at the end of the day, exactly like you said, if I actually look at what I do every day, it's the same anywhere. So it's really not about the location, it's about the stuff you're doing, but we can obsess about these external things. So it's so interesting. There you go. Two more here. If you could give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self, what would that be?
Two things spring to mind is give yourself a break and you will figure things out.
Yeah. I love that. Well, final one, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm just proud of ending up where I am now. That the things, funny enough, I was talking about this with a friend this afternoon, and just appreciating where I am at this moment, and where I am at this moment is enough.
I love that, mate. That's a good message for all of us to remind ourselves of. So thank you for being so open and sharing your story here. And super excited to, see what you're doing, to check out the book and everything else. And I think you're doing a great thing by getting these messages out there. So really appreciate your time.
And I really appreciate being asked to come on your show, Nick.
Thank you, Jonathan Kemp, for joining me today and offering your insights. And thank you for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode and any suggestions for topics you'd like to hear about. Feel free to leave a comment or just send a DM. Your feedback is always appreciated. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.